Hey, hello again. Welcome to another episode in the Jupiter 2 model build series. This episode we're going to start covering getting the upper and lower saucer hulls wired up together. So what I have here are some metal furniture pegs from like an IKEA bookshelf that hold the shelves into the sides of the furniture. And I also have these little teeny 5 by 3 by 10 millimeter magnets. As you can see, they magnetize with each other pretty well, and I'm going to use these to hold the upper and lower halves of the hull together. So the pegs don't fit inside these little stems here very well, so I'm going to drill out the center so that these will drop right inside there. So I'm going to be using a 1364 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill out the center of each one of these posts here that go into the lower half of the saucer. This is the upper half of the saucer here that I'm working on. So I've just drilled out the center here, and you can see my little metal peg drops right inside there flush with the top. And with the magnet, they stick together and I can pull it out. So I've gone around and I have drilled out all these posts in the upper saucer half. Then we have this one post here, which I did not drill out, which I'm using for a guide to put the halves together. You'll also notice here this post is level with the edge of the saucer. So I'm not going to do any work on the post other than drilling it out and dropping in the pegs. But the lower saucer portion that the post goes into is raised quite a bit more than the edge of the saucer. So I'm going to cut this off so that it'll touch with the upper hull post. So what I did is I printed out a little ruler piece here and wrapped it around one of the posts from the upper section. And I took a photograph with the pieces together so that I could measure to see how much I need to cut off the lower post section. Then what I did is I ran a piece of tape around showing me where I need to cut it off so that they will touch each other. So I have now gone around the entire bottom section and cut the post down so that when the two halves come together, the posts touch each other rather than the upper post going inside the lower portion. This one here is for the guide again. And this one I also need to remove. So I've dropped 2 magnets into each one of the lower sections and glued them in position. And I've done that all the way around the entire lower portion of the hull. Then I have gone and put the interior in place in the lower half of the saucer, and I'm going to place the top half on just to make sure everything fits in place okay. And there's actually a rather large gap here, as you can see, in the rear section where they come together. And I am realizing it's that little room I built for the escape pod. So I need to deal with that now. I've gone and I have taken this side off here, and I need to trim it down a steeper angle and cut the back off so that the top can fit over. So I've gone on both sides, chopped them back, curved down the back a little more, and I need to print a new picture for the back. And I have done that, and now the upper and lower halves close together. And rotate it around here, and there's a little sneak of how it looks with the interior inside. It's only open here because of these wires popping out the edge here. So now the window just pops into the upper hull section like so, but the issue with the window frame is there's a big gap here that you can see where the window frame goes inside the upper hull. I've taken some Tamiya putty and I have puttied in those seams and then gone around, sanded it all down, made it nice and smooth. Then I went and shot it with some primer just to test for any more sanding, and it's looking really good right now. I've also gone and sprayed the entire inside of the upper hull black for light blocking purposes. Now I'm going to take some epoxy and put a little epoxy in each of the posts in the upper hull so that I can drop my little metal furniture pegs in and glue them into position so they'll be nice and secure inside the posts in the upper hull. So I'm just going to drop one in here and push it down till it's flush and use a magnet to hold it in place. And I've gone and I have put the metal pegs in each of the posts in the upper hull now. So all of those are now in position. Again, this post here as a guide. And I am ready to put the two halves together to do a test. So I'm going to take the upper section, use this area here, put it in here as a guide to put them in the right position, and get that peg there, and boom, the upper hull snapped into position over the lower hull. And it's actually even strong enough I can lift the entire model just by the upper hull. The magnets are holding it together, though obviously that's not how I would normally pick it up, but it is holding quite well. Yet at the same time, if you firmly grab both sides, you can pop the upper half of the saucer off with no problem whatsoever to view the interior. I've painted the entire upper hull now with white primer and then the Tamiya mica silver so that it matches the bottom saucer hull. And moving on here, we have the clear plastic window which goes in the front of the saucer, and like the interior hatch windows, looking through it there's some distortion, warping, almost like looking underwater. So as with the interior hatch windows, I have gone and cut out my own windows for the front portion of the saucer, and you can see right away the difference between mine and the kit piece. Mine is nice and clear, no distortion. It just looks more like a real window. So I have these three pieces here that I'm going to use to put inside the top saucer. And I've gone and I've glued them into position. You can see the reflection of my finger there when I put it up against the window. And they are nice and clear and they fit really well into that front window section. One other thing my client has asked for to see the flight console area is to cut off this little section here on the ring to expose it more so that it'll be back further like so that you can more easily see the entire flight console and the chairs. So he just wants me to cut this portion off, and I have gone and I've done that now, as you can see. So when the top of the saucer is pulled off, you will see more of the flight console, and this piece I'm just gonna get rid of. In the lower section here, I have my fibers going into this LED here for the door locks, all running to this little board that I made here. And I also have my lights in the landing gear sections also running to this circuit board that I placed here. And this is the tube from the leg I made in the first video, which will have all of my wires running through it. Here we have the controls for the fusion core. We have a power button here. We have a button which changes the speed. This metal button does nothing. But I'm going to have to make it so I can control these two buttons externally through the base. And then I also have the power here to power the unit, which I'm going to be powering off of my little board here on the interior. So my plan was to use copper tape like I did back in my B-Wing video. Cut out a pad here and put copper tape strips in the landing gear. I had cut out a little square pad here which fit into the bottom of the landing gear nice and snug like so. I have cut some copper strips here, put them in position, made one for the base, one for my landing gear, so that when the landing gear touched the base, these would touch together, make contact. I have all of my wires running through the leg, coming out the bottom of the landing gear, then soldered into position on the copper tape. I then put the pad back into the foot of the landing gear, wired up an entire mock board here with the power and buttons and all that stuff so I could test it all. And when I set the leg down on the pad and I turn the power button on, the landing gear lights would come on, the door locks. Turn the power on for the fusion core lights up, operates. Push this little button here to alter the speed of the fusion core, and that works just fine as well. As you can see, it changes speeds when I push the button. And then if you lift it off the pad, you lose power. Set it back down on the pad, you get power. Everything was looking great, very excited about it. And then, no, not gonna work. Once the interior was installed and everything was hooked up, the copper tape just can't handle enough power to power everything up. So ultimately, I ended up having to put plugs coming out of the landing gear. There will be an opposite plug coming out of the base. Unfortunately, you just plug them in and tuck the wires into the base. Though realistically, it'll probably never be removed from the base anyway. Moving on, we had the cable here to operate the lights on the upper hull saucer. And same concept, I glue the wires to some copper tape and figured that I can glue this in position, and when the upper saucer touches the lower saucer, it'll make contact and light up the lights on the upper saucer. And you can see I put copper strip tapes on a board here for the upper light section, and here's the upper light section, and when I touch the two pads together, it actually does work and you get the blinking flashing lights. And because we're only talking minimal lights here, there's no problem doing this. This is the upper dish section which goes on the upper hull. There's these two little bumps on this disc you can see, and this piece fits on the upper hull just like so. The idea behind the third-party light kit is this whole disc with LEDs replaces the disc section underneath this dish, and you take that out, you take this LED section, run the wires through the top, you fit this little round circuit board with the LEDs to the top of the saucer, then you put the dish back in place like so. This is the way the instructions tell you to install it, but these are not to scale. They are too big realistically. And then also, they are extremely bright, as you can see here, and it looks insane. And the real Jupiter 2 never had these lights on the top in the first place. So after talking with the client, what I have done is we're going to keep these little nubs here. I scraped the paint off, made those white again, painted the bottom black, drilled out underneath where those little white bumps are. I'm going to put some SMD LEDs underneath here to shine up through the plastic and just make those little white areas glow, and that'll be a little more realistic and more to scale. And I have two SMDs just taped in place here, and this is strictly just to see how it'll look. And when I apply power to them from the fusion core wires, I get them flashing back and forth, and you can change the speed of them just like the fusion core. So I have glued the SMDs into position with Elmer's glue. I put a piece of electrical tape over them as light blocking, then went around the entire rim of that section with liquid electrical tape for more light blocking and just hold everything in place, tape down the wires. And then I attached those wires to the little pad I made with the copper strips. And when I touch them together with the lower hull, you get the flashing back and forth, and it works just fine, and that's much better looking and much more to scale. Now what I did here is I marked the edge of the board on the lower saucer with a piece of tape. Then I took the upper saucer, put it together with the lower saucer, and then took another piece of tape, marked the upper saucer so that I have a guide as to where to glue the pad into the upper saucer. So I've got my piece of tape here marking the edge of where the pad needs to go. And then I'm just going to glue the pad into position right on the edge of the tape, and it should line up with the lower saucer. I've also gone, and because I'm only using 3 wires, I've redone the copper tapes and made them thicker and wider so that it's easier for them to make contact. Did the same with the upper saucer as well, replaced them with thicker, wider strips to make better contact. And then we take the clear dome, put it on top of the upper saucer like so, and we take the upper saucer half, touch it down to the lower saucer half. They come in contact with the magnets, the pads come together, and the lights blink in the upper saucer. So that's going to complete it for this video. Upper lower saucer halves are both completed, ready to go. The interior is all done, ready to be installed. So we're just about at the end here. Got to finish up my base, do final assembly, and we're all done. So until next time, thanks for watching. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.